Welcome back, NUIC football fanatics. We're here to bring you our Week 2 predictions and matchups. That was a pretty interesting week in Week 1 there, Shane. What do you think about that?
A few surprises, but for the most part, things went how we thought they would. Big surprise was definitely EPC taking down Lena Winslow, and especially in the fashion in which they did. Another surprise would be the way that Polo showed up against River Ridge. I think a majority of people thought that that was going to be a blowout, and it wasn't the case. And another game that wasn't really a surprise, but it went against what we picked, was the fact that Galena did not beat Amboy.
I would agree with you. I mean, that EPC game was great as far as being a Wildcats fan. They really took it to Lee Win. They shut Lee Win down. I was really surprised at the way that they came out and just handled their business and definitely made a case for themselves as far as the season is moving forward. I can definitely see them being a contender for the conference. We already had stated that they're not a team to overlook, and I feel that they could be a team that can definitely crack that 6-win or 5-win mark and get into the playoffs after watching them play last week.
And I would agree with that. That was one of those teams that we said, Lena's going to have to show up and be ready to go, because EPC plays very well at Pearl City. They have over the years not lost many games there. I don't know what it is, but they do pretty well at Pearl City, and Lena found out the hard way.
Yeah, I agree on that too. Let's move forward though, and let's look at our Week 2 matchups. We're going to start in the Northwest Division. The first game that we're going to start with is going to be Galena at Forston. Last week, Galena lost to Amboy 20-14, and Forston beat AFC 41-0. What's your take on this game, Shane?
Well, a few things that we could look at, is Galena really down like we thought they were, or is Amboy that good? Forston, that seems to be everyone's preseason pick of winning the Northwest, and I still feel that they're the best team within the division. So, it's going to come down to whether Galena is going to be able to keep pounding, and whether Forston is going to be able to stop them, and then vice versa, whether Galena can stop Forston. This is a big game for Galena.
This is a huge game for Galena because a loss here bodes a lot of potential losses coming forward. I mean, they got games against Lee Win, EPC, West Carroll, and Dakota. So you get 2 more losses, you could be out of the playoffs. 3, you're definitely out. So that's going to be a huge key for Galena, is to come into Forston and win this football game.
Right, which seems crazy that, Week 2 we're already talking about must-win games, and we'll get into that as the night goes on. I mean, this might be a common theme as we continue through our predictions.
Yeah, as far as Forston goes, we know Forston has a lot of returning starters. We know that they're the fastest team in the conference. They don't need this game as bad as Galena needs it, but they definitely need to come ready to play, as they still have a gauntlet of a schedule remaining as well, especially with Dakota in Week 3. They cannot overlook Galena this week, trying to look at Dakota for next week.
And I don't think they will, and that's why I'm still picking Forston to take this game by 2 scores.
I agree with Forston taking the game. I think it'll be by a score, though. I'm not going to agree with you on the 2-score mark. All right, next game we're going to take in is Pecatonica, who lost last week to East Dubuque 27-6. It's traveling to Lena Winslow, who lost to EPC 28-14. What's your outlook on this game, Shane?
Well, I like Lena a lot in this game. Gives them a chance to work on some things that they might not have done well against EPC. Might give them a chance to work on even more things that they want to do down the road. No disrespect to Pecatonica, but I think this couldn't have come at a better time for Lena Winslow.
I agree with you on that one. Lena Winslow won. They need this win. They still have games ahead with Dakota, West Carroll, Galena, and Amboy. In order to make the playoffs, they need to win here. Just like we stated with Galena in the previous game, Lee Win needs to win this game in order to still have a shot at making the playoffs, get to that 5 or 6-win mark. 6-win guaranteed, 5-year line on playoff points. I see this as a very good bounce-back game for Lena Winslow.
Right, and if you're Pecatonica, you're looking at what can we do to possibly slow Lena down to, giving ourselves a chance to win. And like we've said in games past, Pecatonica has really got to slow it down. Take as much time off the clock as they can. The best defense is a good offense. I still think they're going to struggle to achieve this, but like you said, it's more about Lena Winslow in this game than Pecatonica. what Lena's going to be able to do. This solely relies on Lena's ability to move the ball. I don't see Peck being able to stop them.
Yeah, and for Pectonica, I agree with you. They definitely need to get into that game clock control management type
Right.
game. They're going to need to contain the outside run. Lena Winslow wants to get to the outside as quick as possible, and they have the backs that can get to the outside if you're not fast and can contain that outside. They also need to take advantage of Lee Wynn's smaller line size. This is not a Lena Winslow that we're typical of seeing over the past 10 years. This team is much smaller in size. They don't fire off the ball, or at least they didn't fire off the ball that well last week, as they got pretty much dismantled by EPC on that front offensive line. Which, for Lee Wynn's sake, they'll have to adjust that. For Peck's sake, they need to attack that.
Right, and that's why I see Lena coming out as a hungry team and doing whatever they need to do to get the victory, and that's why I have Lena big at home.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Lee Wynn's going to win this game by at least 3 scores.
Last week's big winner, EPC Wildcats, will head to Savannah to take on the West Carroll Thunder. This is a big game for both teams, I feel. EPC's coming off a big win against a good Lena Winslow team that, not many people gave them a chance to. And then, you also have West Carroll, who took a tough loss to Dakota, played right up with Dakota pretty much the whole game. This is big for EPC just as it is West Carroll.
Yes, I agree with you, Shane. I think for West Carroll, there again, we keep repeating it. I think this is a game that West Carroll needs to have in order to stay in playoff contention. You look at the remainder of their conference schedule, they got Amboy, Forreston, Galena, and Lee Wynn still to get through. So that's a tough gauntlet there. But for West Carroll, they definitely have improved a lot.
Very much
Their
so.
game last week against Dakota really impressed me as far as how they controlled the game in the first half. Granted, they kind of lost it there in the second half, really. That's where Dakota really took over in that game. But if they can do that against this EPC game, I would not be surprised if they come out with the victory here.
I would not be surprised regardless of who wins this game. Like we've talked off air, I feel that this could be a trap game for EPC. You're coming off a big win at home against Lena Winslow, and, you're going to West Carroll. In years past, it's, okay, we're going to West Carroll to get the victory. That's not the case this year. Even though West Carroll lost last week to Dakota, West Carroll is still a very good ball club.
Yeah, I mean, I can see West Carroll being a playoff quality team. I can definitely see EPC being a playoff quality team. And that is definitely the key for EPC. You cannot be so high off of your win last week against number 4 ranked Lena Winslow that you go into West Carroll and just come out flat and get spanked around. You got to come out ready to play, and you got to get it going early.
And I think a lot of EPC's success, if they're going to have success on the ground, is going to have to come to the outside. Last week we didn't see very much up the gut to Dakota that West Carroll gave. A lot of yardage that West Carroll gave up, but especially was a big run to Andrew Winger that he bounced to the outside and he was gone. West Carroll has a way of plugging up the middle, and I think EPC is going to have to exploit the outsides if they're going to be able to get it going.
And me personally, I could see EPC doing that. With Haverland at quarterback, he definitely has the ability to get to the outside on that pitch option. He's got Schubert running behind him. Schubert can take it up the middle. He can also bounce it to the outside pretty quick. And I'm telling you, this EPC team is coming out in different offensive schemes. I really see them as the favorite in this game now.
And I would agree. Like we've said, whoever wins this game is not going to be a surprise. It might even come down to who turns the ball over less and plays the game of field position. But like you said, I like EPC. I think it'll be a close game, maybe a score is what I'm feeling.
I would agree with you there. I really see EPC winning this one by a score, maybe even 2 scores like they did Lena Winslow last week.
Our first matchup in the Upstate Division will be the Polo Marcos at the Durand Bulldogs. What do you feel about this game, Kyle?
Well, I was really surprised by Polo. I mean, they came out last week. They beat River Ridge 22-0 as expected. But what I'm really surprised about was the low score. I was not expecting them to only put up 22 points, whereas last year they beat them 60-something to nothing. This year, I kind of thought River Ridge might be able to give them a game. We talked about that last week when we said that they had a nice big line. They would need to control the tempo, which I feel in a 22-0 ball game they did some things right. But Polo was just that much better of a team. But I don't know if that was the real Polo or if that was just the Polo coming out of the gates early and not bringing everything to the table either.
Right, and there still could be something said to the fact that Polo didn't give up any points to River Ridge. We won't dismiss the great defensive effort that they put on the field. But a lot of those questions I don't know if we're going to get an answer with because Durand didn't exactly play Milledgeville very closely. And, if Polo is going to compete for the top of the upstate, here they're only beating River Ridge 22-0, and then somehow is going to be able to give Stockton a game. This will play out, but I'm having a hard time believing Polo is what they were last year.
Yeah, and I would agree with you on that. I mean, you look at Durand. I was expecting the Durand game against Milledgeville to be a little closer than it was, whereas we were looking at Polo to be a little bit more separated than it was. I feel that Polo is definitely going to be able to come out and take care of business in this game. Their biggest key factor is that they cannot overlook the Bulldogs. Looking forward to their Week 3 game against Stockton. For Durand, they need to find ways to keep improving. They need to find ways to keep fighting. They cannot be lost on a 50-0 loss to Milledgeville in Week 1 and cap that off as their season. They got to keep coming back and fighting. And I think they have an opportunity if they can play their game and slow the game down to their speed and not Polo speed to be able to pull off a possible upset here in Polo.
And I think that this game is going to be very similar to what we talked about the Pecatonica and Lena game. Yes, Polo won, but I think this is a good opportunity to get back on track, just as it was for what we feel Lena will be against Peck. And as far as Durand, they will also have similarities to what Peck wants to do against Lena. I think Durand needs to slow this game way down, use as much time as they can, back to the whole a good defense is a good offense. Well, Polo's no slouch on defense. I think Durand's going to have a very tough game.
I would agree with you there. In fact, I think Polo is going to win this one by 3 scores myself.
Yeah, and I didn't even come to the point of putting a score on it. I think it could get out of hand in a hurry, unfortunately, for the Bulldogs.
All right, let's head on over to the best field in the conference at River Ridge, where they're going to be the host to the Stockton Blackhawks. Stockton's coming off a 68-6 win over Orangeville, where River Ridge had that 22-0 loss to Polo that we just got done talking about. What's your keys for Stockton in this game, Shane?
Pretty much status quo. Finding out what worked well against Orangeville and pretty much applying that to River Ridge. Now, obviously, River Ridge, I feel at this point, is a touch higher than Orangeville, but I think you're going to have success along the same lines of what you did. Now, Stockton, leaving that game was a little banged up. It'll be interesting to see if everybody returns. We haven't heard much on that, but I think this is one of those games where it's not going to be about River Ridge so much as what Stockton can do.
See, and I have a little different take on it. I feel that Stockton needs to come into this game knowing that they have Polo in Week 3. I think they can't overlook the Wildcats with the way that they played Polo last week. I feel that they need to come in here and they need to take care of business as usual, and they need to focus on that before they start focusing on Polo.
Right, and that is one of my points, for River Ridge. They need to put an effort on the field like they did against Polo because, that was only a 2-score game or a 3-score game. I think that if River Ridge puts themselves within a score to at Stockton, say at halftime or a point in the third quarter, they got to be feeling pretty good about themselves.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I have. River Ridge needs to come out with that same defensive mindset that they had in the Polo game,
right.
And they need to come out and control the clock. They need to control ball tempo, and they need to be able to score. If they can put some points on the board and control that clock and the tempo of the game, then they might have a chance at upsetting Stockton here.
Right. But I just don't know that if it's going to be enough to take the Blackhawks down at this point, and that's why I have them winning by 3 scores.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not sure how big Stockton is going to win, but I feel that I would agree with you. It's definitely going to be a 3-score game or better in this one. Things don't get any easier, and our next game is Warren heads to AFC. Warren lost last week to Ackman 25-22, and AFC had that loss to Forston 41-0. Both teams are needing a win this week in order to stay in the hunt of conference title, but let alone maybe even making the playoffs. What do you think, Shane?
Right. Going into that Warren-Akron game, we thought Warren might win, but we also knew it was going to be a very close game. But let's look at the facts for a second. Warren still has Stockton. They still have Polo. They still have Galena.
And Milledgeville.
And Milledgeville. Those are 4 games right there on top of your loss to Akron. Those 4 games are going to be crucial, and AFC isn't a gimme. I mean, they might have lost pretty big to Forreston, but, AFC is one of those teams that's still going to be right on the cutoff.
I agree with you. AFC's got some athletes. I mean, they're a little bit down from last year from what I've heard and seen, but I feel that they're still a very competitive team. They got a very good coach there that does a really good job of getting them prepared for games. It's definitely a must-win, and I expect them to come out like it's a must-win game for AFC.
Right, and the big thing for AFC is, they need to bounce back. There's nothing wrong with losing to Forreston, probably the best team in the NUIC this year. It might have been a running clock, but it wasn't a terrible, terrible pounding like we've seen in teams in years past. You got to forget about it. It's on to the next. You have a very winnable game against Warren, and I think Warren probably feels the same way going to AFC. We have a very winnable game. It's going to come down to ball control and turnovers.
Yeah, AFC cannot worry at all about that game with Forreston. Forreston is definitely prepared. AFC's younger than Forreston. Forreston's returning a lot of juniors with a lot of varsity experience from last year. I mean, that's why they're the pick to win the Northwest side this year. That's why they started off state ranked even. AFC cannot hang their hat on that. They need to focus on Warren this week. Come out with a game plan that is going to work for them. They're young, they're somewhat inexperienced, but they face a Warren team that lost a lot on their offensive line and their defensive line, and I feel that that's an advantage that AFC could possibly take over on that.
Right, and I think that's what Warren is probably worried most of. When are we going to figure out and when are things going to gel for us as a new group? I mean, you lost a lot on a very successful team. When are things going to form together so that we can get this ball rolling again?
Yeah, and I agree there too. I mean, Warren relied a lot on Kaiser last week. They need to be able to find a different weapon. The game was close, don't get me wrong. It was a 3-point game is where it finished. But you have to remember that Akron had a 2-touchdown lead there late in the game until Warren made it that 1-score game.
Right. So with all the information we've collected and spoke out here, how do you think this game's going to go?
I have a feeling that Warren is going to come out ahead in this one. I think they're going to get this by at least a score.
Yeah, and I would agree. I like Warren on the road. I think AFC very well could pull this off, but I think Warren is going to take it.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Our next game will take us to Orangeville, where they will be welcoming the East Dubuque Warriors. What do you think about this game, Kyle?
Well, I see this as an opportunity for East Dubuque to definitely go to 2-0 on the year. They definitely need to come out ready to play this game. They're going to have a hard schedule the rest of the way out, so I really feel that they need to come in, take care of business, and win this game. As for Orangeville, they need to improve their line play. If they don't, they're going to see a lot of the same things they saw last week against Stockton, where they were just getting beat off the line of scrimmage and getting hit before the quarterback even really had the ball.
Right, and back to East Dubuque, like you said, they need this game to go to 2-0. You look at the schedule of what they have left. Next week they have Galena, so things get hard in a hurry. But I also think that this could be a very competitive game. East Dubuque and Pecatonica played a very close game, and I think Orangeville might be able to play with East Dubuque pretty easily at home. And by easily, I mean I think this will be a pretty decent game. Orangeville needs to cut down on the mistakes and get rid of the whole Stockton game out of your head. Just forget about it.
Yeah, I mean, Orangeville has to forget about Stockton. Stockton is obviously what we feel the best team in that side of the conference. It's hard to match up. You got week 1. You're trying to implement new things. You got a young team. I mean, their quarterback and their main wide receiver are both juniors. You got to come back refocused. You got to come back strong, and you got to put forth the effort, which I don't feel that Orangeville isn't putting forth effort. I feel that they are. but you got to come out ready to play, and you got to show that you're ready to play, and that starts on that offensive line. They got to get them blocks in. If they don't get them blocks in, Austin Guy's going to have a hard time getting that ball off, which was the case against Stockton.
Right, and games are won in the trenches. It's all about the line play, and Orangeville no different than any other team. Like you said, they need the line play. But I also think that East Dubuque also needs the line play just as well. They feel that they might not have played that well against Pecatonica. So, this is a good opportunity for East Dubuque to also work on some things that they need to do and get to that 2-0 mark, And if we've talked to people around the conference and other viewers and whatnot, and East Dubuque is not a team that many people had starting off 2-0. This might be a good chance to say, hey, look at us here. We're 2-0 too.
Yeah, I mean, East Dubuque has that chance to start off 2-0. I feel that they have some things and areas that they need to clean up with that Pecatonica game, to be honest. I feel that they could have beat Pecatonica by more than they did. I feel Pecatonica is better than what people think they are as well.
Right.
Therefore, my feelings on East Dubuque is this may be an 8th team in the conference that can actually put up an opportunity to make it a huge playoff run in that Northwest Division.
Right, and if that happens, we will have a mess because, top to bottom, you're looking at teams that should have won last week or didn't, but we'll see how things play out. But I like East Dubuque in this one.
I do too. I think East Dubuque comes in and they're going to take care of business. I would like to see Orangeville definitely come in and try to win this game, so it's a very competitive ball game. So we have our Northwest game of the week, which features Dakota at Amboy. Dakota last week won 14-0 over West Carroll, and Amboy came out and beat Galena 20-14. What do you think this game's going to bring us here, Shane?
Very competitive and close game, hopefully. The game of the week is supposed to be a close one, and I don't think this one will disappoint. There's a lot of things we could dissect in this, and I think as far as Dakota goes, their success against West Carroll was largely in part to Andrew Winger. The kid had close to 200 yards on 18 carries. That was a majority of their offense right there. I think for Dakota to have success, they really need to spread the ball out just to get things going.
Yeah, I see that as a definite point of interest there. Holsey only had, 57 yards rushing compared to Winger's 199 yards. Dakota definitely needs to get the ball in somebody else's hands, Holstey's per se. That way Amboy is not focused on just stopping Winger. And then on top of that, they need to get more pass game going. Meyer only threw for 5 yards on 2 for 6 passing.
That's not going to get it done.
That's not going to get it done. Granted, they're learning a new offense, so I'll let that slide for the first half. But you got to open it up now. And coming in against Amboy, nobody in the conference knows what Amboy is. But what we do know is Amboy comes out of a Three Rivers conference that's very tough year after year. They have anywhere from 1A to 3A schools. We mentioned that in our preseason show. This Amboy team is not a team to overlook. They just beat a very good Galena team that started off last year as the preseason #1 team. Granted, this year's Galena team is not last year's team. But this year's Galena team is still a very good team. And Amboy traveled to Galena and beat them in Galena.
Right, and I've been looking for things on how to break this game down. I think something that's really weighed on my mind a lot is, this might be a carbon copy of each other. Amboy's got more size, but as far as the defenses go, we're running the same thing. And in order for the offensive games to be successful, they're going to have to exploit the same areas as on each other's defense. They're basically, at this point, I would say, very similar to each other.
Oh, definitely. I see this as a very hard-hitting game. You got guys on both sides of the field that want to come out and hit you. Winger wants to hit you. McPeak wants to hit you. On the other side, you look at Cole Stewart. Cole Stewart wants to hit you. I guarantee their safety, Brady Hewlin, wants to hit you.
Right.
Somebody's going to come out in this game, and they're going to come out ready to hit. on both sides of the ball. And then exactly like you said, both teams run a 5-3 defense. That's a very fast defense. If you're running a 5-3, especially at this level of football, you're fast. And you're fast on the corners, you're fast at the ends, you're fast at the backers.
Well, and that's just it. West Carroll saw most of their success go right up the gut, and I think that Amboy is not going to be able to run to the outside on Dakota. And if they do happen to run to the outside of Dakota, Amboy is going to win this game. But I think that if Amboy wants to be successful, they're going to have to go between the tackles.
And I don't think that Amboy won't decide not to go through the tackles. They like to run a double lead a lot.
Right.
They like to run the trap game. So they're looking to run anywhere from the middle to the tackles. That's where their focus is.
Right, exactly.
Probably out of the 96% of the time that they're running that wishbone, 95% of the time in that option, they're going up the middle and through those holes.
Right, and that's something that the Dakota coaching staff will have to keep an eye on dissecting the film because, like I said, that's exactly where West Carroll had the success. And, we haven't seen Amboy ourselves, but I'd be willing to bet that Amboy will have a slightly higher percentage of success than West Carroll did against Dakota. It's a better running game, I feel, so... And if West Carroll was able to exploit some holes, that should help Dakota shut those holes down, though.
I expect to see in this game, both games trying to control the run clock on offense. I expect them to see a stacked box on defense shutting down the pass game. The team that can be the most two-dimensional in this game is going to be the team that wins.
Right. And also, Dakota allowed West Carroll to have their two opening drives right inside their own 50. So I feel that field position will be very crucial in this game as well. Dakota allowed West Carroll to start their first two drives in Dakota territory. I feel that they cannot allow Amboy to go the short field, and I also feel that Amboy can't allow Dakota to go the short field either.
I definitely feel that Amboy is going to, with their size advantage, I feel that Amboy will control this game more than Dakota will control this game if Dakota does not come out to play.
Right, and that's, there again, something we saw against West Carroll. It was like a two different teams playing. The first half, it was a lot of slow moving and a lot of not much going on. The second half, it was a Dakota team that we've known to see. So, Dakota's got to get off the bus running, but I still like Amboy in this game.
I do too. I think that Amboy's going to win this game by a score.
I agree with that.
This brings us to our upstate game of the week, which is going to feature Milledgeville, a 50-0 winner over Durand last week, facing off against Aquin at Connolly Field, where Aquin was a 25-22 winner against Warren last week. What do you think on this, Shane?
I think Aquin can really build off that win against Warren, and I also think that Milledgeville can really build off that win against Durand. I think this is going to be another one of those games that comes down to a score or two. But as far as things going, Milledgeville really needs to win this. Even though they're at 1-0, they still have Dakota, they have Polo, they have Stockton, and they still have Warren to play at. So, Milledgeville really needs this victory.
Yes, I see that as the same thing. Like you said, Polo, Stockton, Warren, Dakota, they need to win to keep their playoff hopes alive. If they don't win this game, they're going to need to get an upset in the last 4 weeks. They're going to have to beat a Stockton, a Warren, a Polo, or a Dakota in order just to make the playoffs, where it's a little bit more favorable for Aquin at this point.
Right. But Aquin needs to continue to keep taking care of business, as their crossover will also see them playing Amboy. But I like Aquin in this game. I know you will disagree with me on this, but I think Aquin has always had a good history of playing well at home, and I think Aquin can really take the momentum off of the win against Warren.
Yeah, I mean, Aquin, year in, year out, Aquin's one of those teams that you can see not making the playoffs, and somehow they still make the playoffs.
Right.
I don't know how they do it. People say, well, it's the Catholic school recruiting. That's not the case with Aquin. Aquin has always been Aquin names. They're Aquin kids from kindergarten up. So you can throw that garbage out the window. But I do like Milledgeville in this game. Milledgeville has more returning starters, in my opinion, than Ackwen does. They have a little bit more success. I feel Milledgeville wins this game by a score. This brings us to our views of the state rankings and how we see the AP vote will sit for what they consider to be week 1 after last week was considered the preseason rankings. What do you think? What do you have, Shane, for your state rankings going into this week?
Well, my number 1 team has got to be Decatur St. Teresa. You know, we've talked about this a lot. You know, it's a team that has the success factor. You know, you don't win a playoff game for how many ever X amount of years, and you know you drop them a class, so they're going to be in 1A, like we said. Whether you like it or not, that's where they are this year. Definitely the number 1 team in the state, hands down, I would say, after Stark County took what they took. Next, I have Ottawa, 55-0 winners. They'll be my number 2 team. After that, I have the Forest and Cardinals, who took it to AFC 41-0. That was a big game. After Forest, and I have Tuscola at number 4. Tuscola is one of those teams that is always in there year in, year out, whether they're 1A or 2A. You know, they find a way to win, and they always seem to be there come postseason time. After Tuscola, I have the number 5 team being Dakota. You know, a close 14-0 win over West Carroll. You know, we're still not sure what we're getting with Dakota. Hopefully this coming week will tell us a little bit more. After Dakota, at number 6, I have Brown County. They were 28-20 winners over Carrollton, which a lot of people had Carrollton really high, and the AP had Carrollton really high. So, you know, Brown County moves up quite a few spots from where they were last week. After Brown County, I have Athens at number 7, 27-10 winners in their game. After Athens, I have Bureau Valley, who beat Erie Prophetstown 47-13. Bureau Valley has a rich history. They're going to be a good team and definitely a team to watch come playoff time. After Bureau Valley, I have our Stockton Blackhawks, who were winners over Orangeville 68-6. You know, Orangeville didn't put up much of a fight, and Stockton found a way to get it done, and Stockton crawls into our AP top 10 in my opinion. Rounding out the top 10 at number 10 would be Leroy, who is a 28-3 winner.
All right, and for mine, I agree with you there on Decatur St. Teresa at number 1. They beat Tolono Unity. If you don't remember, Tolono Unity was Class 3A runner-ups last year. Beat them 27-0. So easily, in my opinion, right now, they deserve the number 1 ranking in the state. Number 2, I agree with you there too. Ottawa Marquette, 55-0 winners over Marquette. Number 3 is where I'm going to change from you, though. I feel Tuscola being 61-6 winners over Fisher. Tuscola jumps in that number 3 spot. You'd stated their success. I mean, it wasn't too long ago that they were in 5 state championship games in 6 seasons. So, and last year they spent most of the year ranked number 1 in 2A until they lost in the second round of the 1A playoffs in an upset fashion. Number 4, I have Forston, 41-0 winners over AFC. That puts our Cardinals at number 4. At number 5, I have our very own Dakota Indians as 14-0 winners over West Carroll at number 5. Mainly due to the losses because of Stark County and Lena Winslow is how Dakota moved up to number 5 in my opinion of the vote. At number 6, Brown County being preseason number 9 beat number 7 Carrollton 28-20. Brown County at number 6. Athens number 7 moving up with a 27-10 win over Pleasant Plains. Leroy, I have Leroy jumping into the vote with a 28-3 win over Colfax Ridgeview. Like you said, Bureau Valley, they're always a tough team, usually a 2A, 3A school. Dropping into 1A this year based off an enrollment drop. They beat Erie Prophetstown 47-13. I have them at number 9. And number 10, I'm going back with the NUIC, Stockton Blackhawks. I agree with you. Stockton creeps into the top 10 rankings this week with a 68-6 win over Orangeville. So that leaves me with who dropped out at number 1, Stark County, number 4, Lena Winslow, and number 7, Carrollton. As far as our panel vote, we'll go through that. That, again, is our vote that brings everybody's vote together into one consolidated vote. At number 1, we have Decatur St. Teresa. Number 2, Ottawa Marquette. Number 3, Tuscola. Number 4, Forston. Number 5, Dakota. Number 6, Brown County. Number 7, Athens. Number 8, Stark County. Number 9, Leroy. And number 10, Bureau Valley. The AP vote did come out this week early, a day early in fact. So we have that vote. our AP vote: number 1, Decatur; number 2, Ottawa Marquette; number 3, Tuscola; number 4, Forest; and number 5, Dakota; number 6, Brown County; number 7, Athens; number 8, Stark County; number 9, Bureau Valley; and number 10, Stockton. And that brings us to the end of our state rankings for this week. What do you got for a recap here, Shane?
I think that this week will definitely tell us a lot about a lot of teams. You got a big matchup with Dakota Amboy, big matchup with Milledgeville Aquin. Can Lena get back on track? These are all questions that are going to be answered by Friday night, and next week's show should be a good one.
Yeah, and I see another big game with the EPC West Carroll.
Exactly.
I mean, you left that one out, but that is definitely a big game. This week is definitely going to open up a more broader picture of where everybody really stands.
Right.
Coming in to this week, I feel we got 7 to 8 teams in the Northwest Division that can run away with it, and I see 4 to 5 teams in the Upstate that can run away with it. It's really going to be interesting to see how this all plays out this week.
It makes for a great year when you have top to bottom, all close teams. You just hope that it ends up being in a good way rather than a bad way.
Yeah, and you can never deny that. I feel that this year is definitely going to bring us some very good football, and we're going to see a lot of teams in the playoffs from the area, don't get me wrong.
Right.
We may not see the typical 7 or 8 teams in the Class 1A playoffs. We may see 6 or 5 in the 1A playoffs with 2 in the 2A playoffs even.
Right. So, out of all these games that we listed, which game do you think you're going to take in?
We're going to take in the Galena at Forreston game this week. We'll be down there for that game. We'd probably have taken in the Dakota at Amboy games to be in our game of the week, but we just can't make it to Amboy in time after work. I'd love to be down there, no disrespect to Amboy, but I just can't make it down there in time to see your guys' game this week with our work schedule.
That's a haul.
That is a haul. So we'll be in Forreston this week.
Right. And I am still looking at a couple different possibilities, whether we go see how Polo and Duran shakes out, or Milledgeville and Aquin. Just working out a few details yet with directors and whatnot.
Yep. So that will end our show this week. We hope you enjoyed it, and we look forward to seeing you guys on Friday and for some more awesome NUIC football.